She was locked in the store cellar, a small, dark space beneath the old community market. Clara could hear the faint hum of the world above while she sat on the cold concrete floor, holding her knees to her chest. Stacks of dusty boxes surrounded her, filled with forgotten items the store had long since stopped selling. It smelled like mildew and old wood, a scent that made her stomach twist in discomfort. Clara had come to the market that day, like she often did after school. She loved the place with its bright lights and buzzing energy, but today was different. She had gotten curious and decided to explore a little. That curiosity had led her down to the cellar, hoping to find hidden treasures among the old stuff. But when she tried to leave, she discovered that the door was stuck. She pushed with all her might, but heard nothing except her heartbeat echoing in the silence. Hours passed, or at least it felt like they did. Shadows grew longer in the dim light as the sun dipped lower outside. Fear crept in, tightening its grip on her as she remembered the stories about the cellar. Some said it was haunted, others told tales of why it was kept locked. She couldn't help but imagine dark figures lurking just beyond those walls. With every passing minute, her breath became shallower. Meanwhile, outside, it was just another afternoon for Jamie, the store clerk. He was busy organizing shelves, arranging cans and boxes just right, when he noticed Clara was gone longer than usual. He always kept an eye on her. As a local boy, Jamie knew everyone in town, and Clara was like a little sister to him. He felt a pang of worry strike in his chest. She was adventurous, always getting into something she shouldn't, but he believed in her spirit. He called, trying to keep his voice calm. Silence answered him. He walked through the aisles, peering into nooks and crannies, checking the bathroom and the storage rooms, but there was no sign of her anywhere. His heart raced as he headed for the cellar door. Jamie had never been down there for long, not since the store's owner had given him a stern warning about the old, brittle stairs, but fear of what could happen to Clara pushed him forward. He grasped the cold metal handle and turned it. It wouldn't budge. He knocked on the door, calling her name again, his voice growing shaky with concern. Clara. The only reply was the creaking of the wooden stairs above him. Panic bubbled inside him as he pulled on the handle again, trying to force it open. Finally, he decided to find the key, realizing that time was running out. Clara hugged her knees tighter, fighting back tears. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the warm, glowing light of the market above her. She thought of her friends, of her favorite movies. She could hear laughter in her mind, but nothing could drown out the distress of being trapped. As she sat in the dark, she focused on listening. It was quiet except for the sound of her breathing and the faint dripping of water somewhere. Each drop echoed like a countdown, reminding her of her isolation. She wanted to scream, to yell for help, but she didn't know if anyone would hear her. Meanwhile, Jamie was on the hunt for the key. He rushed to the little office at the back of the store where Mr. Thompson, the old storekeeper, kept his files. The key should be right there in the drawer. He flung it open and rifled through papers. Then he saw it, a shiny silver key just waiting to be found. Jamie grabbed it and dashed back to the cellar door, his heart pounding in his chest. "Clara," he shouted. With shaky hands, he inserted the key into the lock. The metal clicked, and for a moment everything was still. Clara's heart leaped at the sound. She could almost feel the warmth of the lights above her, almost hear Jamie's voice full of relief and reassurance. He turned the handle and pushed the heavy door open. Light flooded into the cellar like a sunrise, bright and overwhelming. Clara squinted against the sudden brightness, and there he stood wide-eyed and breathless. He exclaimed, rushing to her side. "I was so worried," she nodded, but the tears she had held back began to spill over. "I was trapped," she whispered, her voice cracking. Without another word, Jamie wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. The warmth of his embrace melted the fear away, wrapping her in safety like a blanket. "I'm here now." They stayed like that for a moment, holding on like the world outside didn't exist, but reality came rushing back. Clara pulled away, her cheeks still damp. "I didn't mean to go down there." "I know," Jamie said, running a hand through his hair as he let out a deep breath. "Just next time, let me know, okay?" She could see the worry still etched on his face, the love masked by fear. "I promise." He smiled, trying to ease the tension. They climbed the stairs together, leaving the darkness behind them. The market felt so alive and bright compared to the cellar. Clara could hear the chatter of customers and the clattering of shopping carts. A weight slipped from her chest as they stepped into the bustling world above. "Thanks for saving me," she said softly, her heart still racing. Jamie shrugged, trying to play it cool. She smiled, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. They walked back into the aisles, laughter ringing in their ears, sinking into the everyday rhythm of the store. But for Clara, the experience stayed fresh in her mind like a vivid painting. It reminded her of both the darkness she had faced and the light that followed. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the market, Clara felt a newfound strength. She would explore again, but maybe with a little more caution. If she had learned anything, it was that the doors to adventure sometimes have locks, but there's always someone willing to find the key. That evening, as Jamie counted the register, Clara watched him diligently, a sense of gratitude swelling in her chest. She was no longer just the curious girl who loved to wander. She was someone who had faced her fears and found a friend who wouldn't let her be alone. The world outside would always have shadows and mysteries would remain unsolved, but she now understood that there was light to be found even in the darkest places. And all it took was a little courage and the love of a friend who would always be there, ready to find the key. As they locked up for the night, Clara looked up at Jamie. "What if there are more locks out there?" He grinned, eyes sparkling. "Then I'll find the keys." And with that promise hanging in the air, they stepped out together into the cool night, ready to face whatever came next, armed with friendship and courage. Clara's heart raced as she pressed her ear against the cold wooden door. On the other side, she could hear faint voices, distant, muffled, almost like a ghostly echo. The store above bustled with life, but down here in the dark cellar, it was a different world entirely. Panic began to swirl in her stomach. How had she gotten herself into this situation? Just hours earlier, she had wandered into the little community market, the one that smelled of fresh bread and warm spices. She loved the way the morning light streamed through the big windows, warming the colorful displays of fruits and vegetables. But today was different. Today, her curiosity led her down a narrow, creaking staircase at the back of the store. She folded herself into the shadows of the cellar, peering into dust-covered boxes filled with forgotten treasures. Old toys, rusted tools, and even strange bottles with faded labels spoke of times long past. Each item was like a portal to another life. She felt that thrill of adventure, the kind that made her heart skip a beat. But the thrill turned to dread when she tried to return to the light of the store and found the door locked tight. She had stumbled upon something hidden, but it also felt like a trap. It had looked so inviting at first, just a little exploration, just a peek into forgotten corners. The exploration had led her to one of the oldest parts of the store, a place where whispers of stories long gone drifted through the stale air. "Clara," Jamie's voice startled her, breaking the stillness like a pebble thrown into a calm pond. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly followed by sorrow. She wanted so desperately to answer him, but her voice caught in her throat. He called again, more urgently this time. She could hear the worry growing in his tone and felt a wave of guilt. This wasn't just her adventure, it was affecting him too. She banged on the door, her fists hitting the heavy wood. "Jamie," but the darkness wrapped around her like an unwelcome blanket, muffling her cries. Above her, Jamie's mind raced. Clara had always been a spirited girl, always looking for adventure in the most unexpected places. But he never imagined that a simple exploration would lead her to be trapped. He felt a knot tightening in his chest. "I'll find you, Clara," he shouted, his voice shaking a little as he tried to keep calm. The store felt too quiet now, an unsettling silence settling around him. He rushed to the office where the key to the cellar was kept. "Where is it?" he muttered, tearing the drawers apart. His hands fumbled through paperwork like they were leaves in autumn. The key was supposed to be right there, waiting for him like a lifeline, but it felt like an eternity had passed. Minutes dragged on, testing his patience and resolve. Every second counted, and he felt like he was losing a race against time. This wasn't just a game anymore. Clara was scared. It hit him hard. She was his friend, someone who looked up to him. The thought of failing her chilled him to the bone. "Please, please," he whispered, praying for a sign. Finally, like a beacon of hope, he spotted the glint of metal in the corner of the drawer. There it was, the key. He snatched it up and bolted toward the cellar door, his heart pounding against his ribcage. Clara sat in the darkness, her fingers trembling as she traced patterns on the dirty floor. Memories of light flooded her mind, laughing with friends, running through the sunlight, but now it felt surreal. A panic had settled in, feeding on her isolation. She imagined what might happen if she couldn't get out. Would anyone even notice she was gone? A weight pressed against her chest at the thought. Then she heard it, a faint jingle. It was the sound she longed for. Jamie's voice rang out once more, clearer, more determined than ever. She jumped to her feet, buoyed by the hope that her friend was coming for her. "I'm here," she cried, her voice piercing through the darkness. She pressed her back against the door, her palms sweaty against the cold surface. As Jamie turned the key in the lock, his hands were shaking, urgency fueling his every move. "Just hold on, Clara." The door creaked as it started to open, and light spilled into the cellar like liquid gold, illuminating Clara's frightened face. When he finally pushed the door open, the sight before him felt surreal. Clara, a picture of anxiety mixed with relief, stood there, and for a moment time stood still. The shadows that had clung to her vanished like fog under the morning sun, and in that moment nothing else mattered. He gasped, stepping into the cellar to pull her into a warm embrace. "I thought I was going to be stuck forever," Clara breathed, her voice trembling. Jamie held onto her tightly, relief flooding through him like a wave. "You're safe now." They backed out of the cellar, leaving behind the darkness. As they climbed the stairs, the voices and sounds of the store began to fill their ears again, a siren call pulling them back to reality. And yet a new bond had formed between them, not just as friends, but as allies against the unknown. Later, once the bright lights of the store wrapped around them again, Clara felt a warmth bloom in her chest. "Thank you for finding me," she said, looking up at Jamie. "Of course I'd come," he replied, still catching his breath. "You're my friend." A flicker of emotion passed over Clara's face, gratitude layered with something deeper. She had learned an important lesson, one that etched itself into her heart. Sometimes the darkest places held the greatest fears, but they also led to the brightest lights when you had someone by your side. Days passed and life in the market continued, but Clara couldn't shake the memory of being trapped in the cellar. She tried to focus on the laughter and chatter of her friends, but shadows sometimes lurked at the corners of her mind. One afternoon, she found herself drawn to the back of the store again, the cellar door standing there like an unspoken challenge. She hesitated, memories washing over her, but then Jamie appeared, his presence grounding her. He asked, casually leaning against the wall, sensing her thoughts. "I don't know." Her hands trembled slightly as she gestured toward the door. "Maybe we should go in together," he suggested, a bold twinkle in his eyes. "Face the darkness." The words echoed through Clara together. She took a deep breath, nodding. Curiosity and fear blended into excitement, and for the first time she felt ready to confront what had scared her before. With Jamie standing beside her, Clara pushed the door open, stepping into the cellar once more. This time, however, the darkness felt less suffocating. It was simply a space filled with echoes of stories waiting to be told. Clara began to explore again, this time with purpose. "See, it's not so scary," Jamie said, shining his phone flashlight around, illuminating the objects that had once felt so ominous. With every step deeper into the cellar, Clara felt herself transforming. The fear slowly evaporated, replaced by a thirst for discovery. She turned to Jamie, and a smile broke through her apprehension. They spent the next hour sifting through the dusty boxes, turning their expedition into an adventure. Clara laughed as they uncovered quirky items, a vintage toy robot, an old photo album filled with faded pictures, and even a bizarre assortment of cookie cutters shaped like animals. Every object sparked stories and laughter between them. The cellar, once a symbol of fear, shifted into a playground of secrets and history. Clara held up a dog-shaped cookie cutter, her eyes glimmering with mischief. Jamie grinned, the warmth of their newfound camaraderie filling the dark corners around them. As they continued to explore, the bond between them grew stronger. The shadows that once swallowed Clara were now illuminated by Jamie's steady presence. They shared stories of their childhoods and dreams for the future, laughter echoing off the walls, filling the empty space with their joy. It was in that moment that Clara realized that darkness could be confronted. It wasn't just a void, it could also become a canvas for new adventures, a place where friendships could deepen and memories could be formed. Finally, as the sun began to set outside, casting a warm glow over the world, Clara and Jamie climbed back up the stairs. "Thank you for helping me face my fear," Clara said, the sound of her voice steady, filled with hope. "I'll always be here," Jamie replied with a wide smile. And with that, they stepped into the light together, ready to face whatever came next, not just as friends, but as comrades armed with courage, laughter, and a single golden key that opened the door to their endless possibilities. The heavy door creaked shut behind her, and in that moment, Clara felt a shock of fear run down her spine. The faint sounds of laughter and chatter above faded into a muffled silence, replaced by the eerie echoes of her own heartbeat. She had wandered into the store cellar, her curiosity leading her into this dark, dusty space filled with the scent of mildew and forgotten memories. It was just supposed to be a quick look. The community market she loved was alive with color and sound, bubbling with the joyful hustle of the late afternoon. Clara had always been the adventurous type, drawn to hidden corners and unexplored nooks. But now, as she faced the heavy wooden door, she realized the mistake she had made. The door had swung shut behind her with a decisive thud, trapping her alone in the dark. She yelled, her voice echoing off the walls like a plea in the night. The words hung in the air, swallowed by the shadows. Panic rose in her throat. She could hear the faint hum of the outside world, but it felt like miles away. What if no one knew she was down here? The thought sent a shiver through her. Time slipped away, moments stretching into what felt like hours. She crouched in the corner, trying to calm her breathing. With her heart racing, she remembered all the stories she'd heard about the cellar. Old folk tales whispered of lost children and lingering spirits, but she had always dismissed them as mere legends. Now she found it hard to shake the feeling that something could be lurking in the shadows. A voice broke through her chaotic thoughts. It was Jamie, the store clerk and her close friend. Relief surged through her like a rushing river at the sound of his voice. "I'm down here," she banged on the door, her fists hitting the heavy wood. Jamie, she could hear him moving around, checking every corner of the store, his footsteps growing more frantic by the second. He called out again, his voice cutting through her fear. "Hold on, I'll find you." The thought of Jamie searching for her fueled her determination to stay calm. He had always been her protector, the one who kept her safe during their childhood explorations. "I'm okay, Jamie," she shouted, feeling her throat tightening with worry. Upstairs, Jamie had a knot formed in his chest, twisting tighter as he tried to figure out how to get to her. He raced toward the little office at the back of the store, the place where the old cellar key was kept, an anchor in his search. He muttered under his breath, digging through drawers, his hands shaking with urgency. The office was cluttered, papers strewn about like fallen leaves. Jamie frantically rummaged, his mind racing against the ticking clock. Every second felt vital, and all he could think about was Clara alone in the dark. She depended on him, and he couldn't let her down. Finally, with a jolt of triumph, he spotted the glint of metal hidden beneath a pile of receipts. He snatched up the key, feeling its cool weight in his palm, a tangible lifeline to his friend. He yelled, racing toward the cellar door. In the cellar, Clara paced nervously, her mind darting back to the stories her grandmother had told her. They spoke of ancient doors that led to forgotten realms, places where shadows danced against the walls. She shook her head, trying to push the frightening thoughts away, but the darkness felt thick, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket, and she needed to escape. Jamie's voice rang through the door, a bright beacon in her mind. I found the key. A wave of relief crashed over her, and she pressed her back against the door, ready to burst free. I'm here, she cried, her voice tinged with desperation. With a shaky hand, Jamie inserted the key slowly into the lock. It clicked, sending a jolt of hope through Clara's chest. He turned the handle and pushed the door open with a strong thrust, light flooding the cellar like dawn breaking after a long night. Clara shielded her eyes as Jamie stepped through the threshold, his expression a mix of anxiety and relief. He rushed to her side, pulling her into a tight embrace, warmth enveloping her like a shield against the darkness. Thank you, Jamie, she murmured, her voice muffled against his shoulder, her heart still pounding wildly. He stepped back, worry etched on his face. You scared me, Clara nodded, a small smile breaking through her fear. Promise. They walked back up the stairs into the bustling market, bright lights shining down, the aromas of baked goods and fresh produce wafting through the air. It felt surreal, as if she had returned from a different world. Clara inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the familiar scents that once brought her comfort. But beneath the calmness, Clara couldn't shake the grip of the fear she had felt. That cellar, with its shadows and silence, had uncovered a darkness within her that she had to confront. It was more than the fear of being locked away. It was an awakening, a realization that sometimes exploration led to unforeseen consequences. Days turned into weeks, but the memory lingered. While Clara participated in school events and shared laughter with friends, the cellar remained in her thoughts, haunting her every now and then. She would occasionally find herself glancing towards the back of the store, knowing what lay beyond that door. The thrill of her adventure was overshadowed by the shadows that had engulfed her. Meanwhile, Jamie noticed the change in her. He asked one day as they stood in the market, sorting through the stacks of produce. Clara hesitated, biting her lip. I don't know, I just keep thinking about how trapped I felt, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Being trapped can make anyone feel lost, Jamie said, his tone soft but steady. But you also found your way out. Her heart warmed at his reassurance. Jamie had always had a way of breaking down her fears, making them seem smaller, more manageable. They both knew the cellar held a deeper meaning now, a metaphor for the struggles they faced in life. Maybe I should face it again, Clara whispered, steeling herself. The idea intrigued her, and the more she thought about it, the more resolve filled her spirit. Together, they planned a day to return to the cellar, but this time they would go prepared. It wasn't just an adventure, it was an opportunity to reclaim her courage. The next Saturday, Clara stood in front of the cellar door, the cold metal handle glinting in the overhead lights. Beside her, Jamie held a flashlight. He asked, his voice calm but full of excitement. Ready, she replied, her heart pounding, not with fear but with determination. She knew they were about to dive into the unknown, but this time it felt empowering. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open and they stepped into the dim light of the cellar. Clara felt the shadows close in around her, but this time she welcomed them, determined to confront the fear that lingered in the corners of her mind. Let's explore, she said with a newfound confidence, gripping the flashlight tightly in her hand. As they uncovered piles of old boxes and mysterious items, laughter began to replace their nerves. I can't believe they still have these, Jamie exclaimed, holding up a rusted canister. Clara laughed, wiping dust from the surface of a vintage toy. As they ventured deeper, Clara discovered an old photo album tucked away in a corner. She opened it carefully, flipping through faded pages filled with smiles and memories, a portal into the past. She exclaimed, showing Jamie a picture of the market's first opening day, complete with old black and white photos of the original owners and their families. They flicked through the album together, reading stories told in the margins, sharing smiles and laughter over generations lost but not forgotten. The darkness that had once gripped Clara slowly released its hold as she became engrossed in the narratives unfolding before her. The cellar transformed from a space of fear to one of discovery. I think this is so cool, Clara said, her excitement bubbling over. Jamie agreed, and they spent hours uncovering bits of history, using the flashlight to break the shadows, illuminating forgotten stories. With each passing moment, Clara felt her bravery blossom. The mixture of adventure and companionship turned the cellar into a place of strength. Finally, as they were about to leave, Clara took one last look around. Thank you for coming with me, Jamie, she said earnestly. You helped me see this place differently. It's not just a dark corner anymore. Always, he replied, a smile spreading across his face. As they stepped back into the light of the market, Clara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The thrill of adventure had returned, shrouded by a protective understanding of the shadows that could linger. She had faced her fears and emerged stronger, more resilient. From that day forward, the cellar became a place of stories, laughter, and laughter, a symbol of their friendship, a reminder that even in darkness, light could always be found. Clara had unlocked not just a door, but also a newfound courage that would guide her through the many challenges life had yet to bring. Together, they would explore the world, step into the shadows, and face whatever lay ahead, knowing they were never truly alone. The key to their adventure was trust, friendship, and the courage to step into the unknown. The door slammed shut behind Clara with a heavy thud, the sound echoing in the dankness of the cellar. She froze. The warm light of the store above her vanished, replaced by an uneasy darkness. This hadn't been part of her plan. She had only wanted to sneak down for a moment, to explore the dusty treasures of the old store cellar. Now, a wave of panic coursed through her veins as she realized the door was locked. The faint laughter of customers above fluttered away, leaving her in an unsettling silence. She felt small in this cavernous space, mere shadows lurking in the corners, flickering with the hazard of dust motes in the air. Fear twisted in her stomach as she grabbed the cold metal handle, yanking it down with frantic hopes. It didn't budge. Clara, the voice of Jamie, the store clerk she admired for his easy confidence, broke through the wall of silence. Relief washed over her like a cool breeze. "Jamie." She called out, her voice fluttering into the darkness. She banged on the door, the sound echoing like thunder in the confined space. "I'm locked in." Jamie's footsteps hurried across the wooden floors above. She could almost picture him glancing back and forth, searching desperately for her. Clara's heart raced. What if he couldn't find her? What if he left? The idea sent a shiver through her. He shouted back, anxiety lacing his voice. Clara could hear him moving around, calling people to help as he scrambled for the office where the key was kept. Clara sank against the door, her mind racing. She thought about everything she had ever heard about the cellar, stories of forgotten relics trapped in the dark, rumors of odd noises at night. But now, those tales felt hauntingly real. She hugged her knees tighter, listening to the quiet rhythms of her breathing and the distant sounds of the lively market above. When Jamie reached the office, his heart was pounding harder than he thought possible. He threw open the door, searching frantically through the clutter of papers and old receipts that filled the drawers. The key had to be there. Clara needed him. Failure was not an option. He gasped under his breath, pushing aside stacks of forms. His fingers trembled as he sorted through the chaos. Time felt slippery, each tick of the clock echoing in his head. He envisioned Clara's worried face, her bright spirit now crushed by fear. Finally, buried beneath a pile of dusty folders, he saw the metallic glint. He exclaimed, grabbing the key and racing back toward the cellar. "Clara," he shouted as he approached the door, a rush of adrenaline powering his movements. He inserted the key into the lock, his pulse quickening with every twist. It clicked, a sound that shot thrill through him. This was it. The moment of truth, he yelled, turning the handle. The door swung open, spilling light into the cellar like a burst of sunshine breaking through a stormy sky. Clara squinted, shielding her eyes momentarily, then burst into tears of relief. She cried, flinging herself into his arms as he stepped inside. Holding her close, he felt the tension in her small frame ease just the slightest bit. "I thought I was stuck forever," Clara said, her voice shaky but relieved. "Never again," he promised, embracing her tighter. They climbed the stairs back to the store, leaving behind the dank, dark atmosphere of the cellar. Clara finally felt like she could breathe, the vibrant sounds of the market welcoming her back into the world. But even in that relief, shadows lurked in her mind. The fear of being trapped was now an unwelcome memory that would cling to her. Jamie asked as they reached the busy aisles, concern etched across his face. "Yeah, just shaken up, I guess," Clara admitted, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. "Let's grab some hot chocolate, that'll help," he suggested, guiding her toward the cafe corner where the rich smell of cocoa wafted through the air. As they sat with steaming mugs cradled in their hands, Clara felt a warmth spread through her heart, but it didn't chase away the lingering shadows in her mind. The noise of the market flowed around her, laughter and chatter mixing beautifully, but there was still a faint echo of fear that she couldn't quite shake off. "Clara, you know it can't hurt you anymore. You faced it," Jamie said softly, pushing his drink aside to focus on her. She paused, searching for the right words. "Normal to be scared after what happened," Jamie reassured her, his eyes earnest. "But you know I'll be right here with you always. You're not alone." Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps the cellar was not just a place of fear. Maybe it could be a place of strength, too. A thought dawned on her when she wasn't ready to admit but couldn't shake off. Part of her wanted to return to confront the darkness she once feared. Days passed, filled with the comforting rhythms of daily life. Clara often thought about the cellar, about the moment when Jamie had come to her aid. She realized how much his support meant to her. He was the anchor she needed to face her fear. One evening, a glimmer of bravery sparked in her mind. "Jamie," she said, "what if we go back down to the cellar together, too?" He looked at her, surprise mixing with pride. "I think it's time to turn it from a nightmare into an adventure," she declared, surprising even herself with the confidence in her voice. Jamie grinned, his excitement infectious. The next day, Clara stood before the cellar door again, her heart thumping audibly in her chest. Jamie stood beside her, his presence grounding her. He asked, his voice steady as they prepared to step into the unknown. "Ready," Clara breathed, gripping the flashlight she had brought along. With a determined twist of the handle, they opened the door. This time, Clara felt a rush of adrenaline, not fear. They stepped into the darker realms of the store's history, and it was different now. Shadows loomed, but they felt less threatening, more like the remnants of stories waiting to be told. "Let's explore," she said, shining the beam of light across the room. The dusty crates, the old shelves, the forgotten items, each one held a whisper of what once was. "It's like stepping into a time capsule," Jamie said, all lighting up his eyes as they swept the place for treasures. Clara felt her heart swell with excitement as they unwrapped layers of dust, revealing old toys, slightly rusted tools, and peculiar objects that spoke of the past. An old suit of armor caught Clara's eye. "Look at this, Jamie," she exclaimed, her voice echoing in the cellar. "Right." Jamie laughed as they both reached out, tracing their fingers along the metal surface. Time slipped by as they dug deeper, uncovering story after story hidden in the remnants of the past. Clara felt lighthearted, the fears she once harbored dissolving into laughter and wonder. "This isn't scary at all," she said with a bright smile, casting a glance at Jamie. "In fact, it's amazing," he replied, his enthusiasm contagious. "This isn't just a cellar anymore." As they continued to explore, Clara found an old journal nestled within a stack of boxes. Intrigued, she opened it, revealing scribbles and sketches, stories captured by someone long ago. "Jamie, look," she said, her eyes lighting up with discovery. They sat on the floor, rummaging through the pages, laughing at the tales of silly mishaps and whimsical dreams penned by the previous owner. In that moment, Clara realized how far she had come from being trapped in fear. The stories spoken in the diary seemed to echo her own journey, threading them all into a shared narrative of courage and friendship. "I know this sounds cheesy, but I never thought the cellar could turn into something like this," Clara said, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It's not cheesy, it's beautiful," Jamie replied earnestly. "You took a scary moment and made it into something bright." When they finally decided to leave, Clara paused at the door, turning to face the cellar one last time. "Thank you for being here with me, Jamie." He smiled broadly, pride shining in his eyes. "You did it all yourself." As they ascended the stairs back to the bustling market, Clara felt a renewed sense of self. She had faced her fears, transformed the darkness into light, and discovered an adventure that began in a place once cloaked in shadows. The key wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a reminder that courage could unlock even the darkest of fears. Returning to the lively atmosphere of the store, Clara reveled in the vibrant energy of her surroundings. Each laughter, each smile reminded her that life was abundant with stories waiting to be told. Forever grateful for the key that unlocked more than just a door, Clara beamed, feeling ready to embrace every adventure that lay ahead. Little did they know, the cellar wasn't simply a place of exploration, but rather a monument to the bonds of friendship, formed and strengthened through shared courage and unwavering support. Together, they would brave the adventures of life, unearthing treasures both in the world and within themselves. The door slammed shut with a resounding bang, sending Clara's heart racing. The sudden darkness wrapped around her like a cold blanket, smothering the last shreds of the warm light from the store above. She took a step back, her palms sweaty against the heavy wooden door, panic knotted in her stomach. She had only wanted to explore a little, to quench her curiosity about the dusty old cellar she had heard whispers about, but now it felt like a trap. Clara, the voice of Jamie, the friendly clerk she admired, cut through her despair. Relief surged through her, but it was quickly clouded by the weight of dread. She called out, her voice trembling. The sound echoed around her, a reminder of her isolation. Hold on," Jamie shouted back. Clara could hear his footsteps hurriedly moving away as he searched for help. She pressed her back against the door, fighting the rising panic. All around her were stacks of forgotten boxes, shadows lurking in the corners as if they had their own secrets to keep. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the rapid beating of her heart. Clara had always loved exploring. She was the girl who ventured into every nook and cranny, seeking treasure in old trunks and stories hidden in the dust. But now, crawling fear gripped her, reminding her that she was more alone than she had ever been. Clara had heard tales about this cellar, the stories of items lost to time and whispers of spirits lingering in darkness. She shook her head, trying to banish the creeping shadows of her thoughts. But the truth was, being trapped made everything scarier. A chill ran down her spine as she imagined distant figures watching her, unseen but ever present. Jamie's voice, filled with urgency, echoed again. "I'm coming." She banged on the door, frustration blurring her panic. "Jamie, I'm here." The darkness loomed closer, each breath feeling heavier as she listened to the distance grow between them. Upstairs, Jamie was a storm of movement. He dashed toward the little office at the back of the store where the key to the cellar was kept, his heart racing. What if he couldn't find it? What if he didn't get to her in time? The thought nearly paralyzed him. Clara was just a girl, but to him she was more than a friend. She was his little sister in spirit, a beacon of light in his routine. He muttered, rifling through drawers filled with old receipts and an assortment of papers. He needed to remain focused, but time felt like slippery sand slipping through his fingers. He could hear the muffled echoes of Clara's voice mixing with the ambient sounds of the store, the laughter, the clattering of shopping carts, and the gentle hum of the market's chatter. Every sound pulled at him harder. He threw open the last drawer, and there it was, a glint of silver nestled between piles of forgotten items. The key, Jamie exclaimed, grabbing it and darting back toward the cellar door. Relief washed over him, but worry gnawed at his insides. What if he was too late? Clara, he shouted, ringing with determination as he approached the door. He could practically feel her fear seeping through the wood. Jamie shoved the key into the lock and twisted, his heart pounding with urgency. The familiar click of the lock sounded like a beacon of hope. He yelled again as he pushed the door open, flooding the cellar with light. The shadows that had felt so oppressive now peeled back to reveal Clara, crouched against the wall, eyes wide with a mix of relief and lingering fear. She cried as despair fell away at the sight of him. She ran into his arms, the warmth of his presence wrapping around her like a lifeline. Never, he reassured her, holding her close. The grip of panic slowly eased as they stepped out into the vibrant atmosphere of the store. The comforting sense of baked goods and fresh produce welcomed her back. But even in this relief, Clara couldn't shake the whisper in her mind, the fear of returning to the darkness. Jamie asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "I didn't think it would be locked," Clara replied, her voice still trembling slightly. He stepped back, narrowing his eyes with brotherly seriousness. "I promise," she said, the sincerity breaking through her lingering fear. But as they stood amidst the bustling market, that fear didn't entirely fade. The thought of how easily she had been trapped threatened to creep back in, a nagging feeling buried deep. The next few days passed in routine, but the memory of that dark cellar haunted Clara. She found herself glancing toward the back of the store, hesitant. Each creak of wood above her sent shivers down her spine, reminding her what lurked in the shadows. She could almost hear whispers in the air, pulling her thoughts back to the dread of being trapped. One afternoon, as she sorted through shelves of groceries, Jamie approached her, his eyes piercing but soft. "You all right?" Clara paused, biting her lip. "I keep thinking about being down there." She hesitated, searching for the right words. Jamie nodded, understanding her struggle. "It's okay to feel scared after what happened. Everyone does, but you faced it, Clara." "I know," she replied, feeling a flicker of determination ignite. "But I can't let fear win. Maybe I need to go back down there." Jamie stared at her for a moment, surprise flashing in his eyes before he grinned. "I'm in. If you want to go back, I'll go with you," Clara said, feeling a rush of gratefulness. He affirmed, feeling a swell of pride for her. The next day arrived, and Clara stood at the entrance of the cellar, Jamie beside her, the key clasped tightly in his hand. The door loomed ahead, but this time Clara felt a rush of defiance. She asked, feeling her heart pumping steadily. "Ready," Jamie replied, his eyes bright with encouragement. She took a breath, steadying herself as they opened the door once more. Light spilled into the dark corners, illuminating dust and shadows. Clara stepped forward, gripping the flashlight tightly, determined to face whatever lay ahead. "Let's explore," she said, her voice steady as she flashed the light across the room. As they entered, the familiar eerie shadows returned, but it felt different this time. It felt manageable. They started digging through old boxes, uncovering relics of the past, broken toys, ancient photographs, and odd items that had once held significance. With every find, laughter began to fill the air, slowly filling the grave silence of the cellar. Jamie shouted, holding up an old, dust-covered book. Clara exclaimed, their excitement bubbling like soda fizzing over. They flipped through the pages, reading recipes from decades past, their laughter mingling with the ghostly memories of the cellar. The fear that had enshrouded Clara began to dissipate, replaced by the warm glow of camaraderie. They continued exploring. They stumbled upon a collection of vintage games. Clara beamed as they decided to set up a game of cards right there on the dusty floor. "This is much better than hiding in the shadows," she said, laughing as she set the cards down. With every draw and play, they transformed the cellar from a place of fear into a vibrant space of friendship and discovery. Jamie teased, raising an eyebrow as Clara laid out the cards. "Not at all," she replied, her pulse racing with exhilaration. They played, talked, and uncovered stories lost to time, threading their own narrative into the fabric of that forgotten space. Clara realized that the darkness didn't have to defeat her. They could turn it into laughter instead. "Thank you for being here," Clara said as they finished their makeshift game, a sense of gratitude welling up within her. "It's not just me," Jamie replied warmly. "You faced this. You turned fear into fun." When they made the decision to leave, Clara paused, her eyes wandering over the newfound treasures surrounding them. "Let's come back again," she suggested, a smile sprawling across her face. "You got it," Jamie agreed enthusiastically. As they walked back up the stairs into the brightness of the store above, Clara felt an incredible weight lift from her shoulders. The shadows that had once haunted her began to fade, transformed into memories of laughter and adventure. She had confronted the darkness and emerged victorious, not just against the confines of the cellar, but against her own fears. "See, it wasn't so scary after all," Jamie said, nudging her playfully as they returned to the store. "Not at all," Clara grinned, her heart glowing with gratitude. From that day forward, Clara learned that the cellar was more than a dark space. It could also be a reminder that with courage and friendship, shadows could always be bright. They had taken a fearful obstacle and transformed it into a vibrant monument to resilience, laughter, and love. Little did they know the key wasn't merely a piece of metal. It represented a heartbeat of their friendship, promising many adventures and countless treasures yet to be discovered. Armed with curiosity and courage, Clara and Jamie would continue to explore every nook and cranny together, hand in hand, never again letting fear seal them away. Clara was trapped. The heavy door of the store cellar had slammed shut behind her, locking her inside a world of darkness. The echo of her heart thumped loudly in the silence, mingling with the distant sounds of the bustling market above. Just moments ago, she had been exploring, her curiosity leading her into the depths of the old building, seeking out dusty treasures and forgotten stories. Now she felt like a character in a horror film, locked in a dimly lit dungeon. Clara shouted, her voice shaky but filled with urgency. Help! There was a moment of panic, then silence. She sank against the wall, hugging her knees to her chest. What if he didn't hear her? This wasn't how her adventure was supposed to end. Uncertainty clawed at her gut. She listened intently, straining to pick up any sign of movement above, but the laughter and chatter of customers seemed so far away, almost like a dream she couldn't reach. A familiar voice pierced through her worry. It was Jamie, the store clerk, and her friend. In an instant, she felt a flicker of hope, a light in the enveloping darkness. Yes, she cried, banging on the door with her fists, desperation fueling her movements. Just moments ago, the cellar had seemed like a realm of adventure. Now it felt like a prison. She had lost track of time, pondering over old boxes filled with forgotten toys and dusty books. Curiosity had pulled her deeper inside, but now it felt like that curiosity had backfired. Had it led her to this suffocating place? Upstairs, Jamie was frantic. He knew the store well, but the cellar, that was a different beast. He shouted as he sprinted toward the office. He couldn't let her see how scared he was, how much the thought of losing her twisted his stomach. Rushing into the office, he rummaged through the drawers, tossing aside old receipts and paperwork. He needed to find the key to open that heavy door and pull her back into the light. His voice trembled slightly, a reflection of his growing anxiety. His heart raced as he pulled open the last drawer. There it was, a shiny silver key lying beneath a stack of old invoices. He snatched it up, feeling an instant surge of purpose. He yelled, the excitement spilling over the anxiety. He dashed toward the cellar door, the key gripped tightly in his hand, adrenaline propelling each step. In the cellar, Clara's heart was pounding in time with the echoes of her thoughts. What if Jamie couldn't find the key? What if no one else came looking? Fear wrapped around her like a vice, squeezing tighter with every breath. Clara, Jamie's voice burst through the air as he inserted the key into the lock. It clicked with a satisfying sound, a ray of hope piercing through the dense fog of her fear. She shouted, pressing her body against the door, desperate to be back in the world she knew. The moment the door swung open, light flashed into the dark room, illuminating the dust and shadows. There stood Jamie, his face a mixture of worry and relief. He rushed to her, enveloping her in a tight embrace. The warmth of his body felt like safety in the midst of chaos. I thought I was going to be in there forever, she said, her voice tiny as she melted into his hug. That's not going to happen, he said firmly, pulling back to look her in the eyes. As they emerged from the cellar, the bustling sounds of the market enveloped them like a comforting blanket. Clara took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the scent of fresh bread and fruit. But even in that embrace of familiarity, the memory of darkness clung to her. Jamie asked, concern etching his features. Yeah, Clara replied, the word feeling thin and fragile on her lips. Let's get some hot chocolate. It always makes things better, he suggested, guiding her toward the cafe in the corner of the store. Sense of normalcy began to settle back into her chest as they sat down, surrounded by the friendly hum of conversation. Clara wrapped her hands around the warm cup, feeling the gentle heat seep into her fingers. Thank you for finding me, she said quietly, her heart swelling with gratitude. Of course, I'd do it again in a heartbeat, Jamie replied, his eyes sparkling with warmth. But next time, just let me know before you go exploring. She laughed, but the sound was still tinged with unease. These turned into a week, and life continued with its usual rhythm. But Clara found her thoughts often drifting back to that dark cellar. The fear of being trapped lingered in her mind like a shadow, one that refused to fade. Whenever she passed the door leading to the cellar, a shiver raced down her spine, a memory of that weighty silence. Jamie noticed her apprehension, picking up on the flickers of worry in her expression. What's wrong? You've been quiet, he asked one afternoon while restocking the shelves. I keep thinking about being down there, Clara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I was scared, Jamie asked, his eyebrows raising with surprise. I know it sounds crazy, but I think I need to face it again, she replied, determination bubbling within her. Then let's do it together, Jamie said without skipping a beat. Clara felt a rush of excitement. She asked, her heart racing. Absolutely, we'll explore it like we did before. The next day arrived, and Clara felt both anxious and excited as they stood in front of the cellar door once again. Jamie asked, his energy infectious. Ready, she replied, gripping the flashlight they had brought along to illuminate the shadows. With a deep breath, they pushed the door open, light pouring in and banishing the darkness. Clara felt her heart quicken as they stepped inside. This time felt different. She was eager rather than fearful. "Let's explore," she said, the thrill of adventure flooding her veins as she flashed the beam of light across the room. They stepped into the depths of the cellar, and with each step deeper, Clara's courage began to bloom. They started rummaging through boxes, unearthing relics of the past that had been long forgotten. Old toys, dusty board games, and faded photographs brought forth whispers of a time long gone. Each discovery became a stepping stone, bridging her fear to a world of excitement. Jamie exclaimed, holding up a vintage toy robot, its paint chipped and rusty. "Wow," Clara replied, laughter bubbling up. As they explored further, Clara found a stack of old love letters tied together with fraying twine. She carefully untied the bundle and began to read. The words were filled with passion and longing, creating an extraordinary tapestry of emotions that filled the room with life. She called, delighted. Jamie smiled, enjoying the glimpse into someone's past. It did. With every letter, each relic they uncovered, Clara felt a sense of connection forming, a bridge that transformed fear into discovery and wonder. The darkness that had once felt like a suffocating void now became a vessel for stories waiting to be told. "This isn't so scary after all," she said, her heart swelling with joy. Jamie beamed, the warmth in his eyes reassuring her further. As they delved deeper, Clara felt the transformation within herself. She was no longer the scared girl trapped in the cellar. She was an explorer uncovering secrets, one item at a time. Eventually, they stumbled upon a trunk covered in dust and cobwebs. Clara's eyes widened in anticipation as she pried it open. Inside were costumes, extravagant clothes, and old hats, remnants of celebrations long past. Clara exclaimed, excitement bubbling inside her. They began trying on the costumes, laughing at each other's silly poses. The cellar transformed from a space of fear to a stage for their imagination. Clara felt alive, her spirit soaring. Jamie laughed, pretending to strike a dramatic pose. Clara replied, her cheeks pink with joy. As they explored, the shadows grew less menacing, replaced by laughter and companionship. Each shared moment pulled them closer, reinforcing their bond adventure seekers against the unknown. "This was a great idea," Clara said, her heart dancing as they freshly experienced the joy of discovery. Jamie grinned. Finally, as they prepared to leave, Clara paused to survey the room. The cellar that once felt like a trap had transformed into a treasure trove, a reminder that courage and friendship could light up even the darkest spaces. She asked, feeling a sense of loss at saying goodbye. Jamie replied, a wide smile on his face. As they stepped back into the bright world above, Clara knew she had conquered more than her fear. She had reclaimed a part of herself that had been buried in darkness. The journey into the cellar had taught her that light could always be found, even in the most unexpected places. With Jamie by her side, Clara stepped forward, eager to embrace whatever adventures awaited them, knowing that together they could turn any shadow into light. The key to their journey was not just unlocking a door, but unlocking understanding, friendship, and the courage to face the unknown. The door slammed behind Clara with a jarring finality, cutting off the laughter and chatter from the bustling market above. She stood in the dim light of the store's cellar, heart racing as the weight of the moment sank in. It had seemed like a harmless adventure, a simple exploration of the dusty, forgotten corners of the shop. But now she was alone in a world filled with shadows. "Help!" she shouted, her voice echoing off the stone walls, but it only amplified her fear as echoes swirled around her. The comfort of bright lights and friendly faces above felt miles away, their warmth fading like the sound of her cries. She pressed her back against the cold door, feeling the heaviness of the wood as though it were both a barrier and a weight, trapping her in this eerie silence. Clara had always been curious, always the one to peek into nooks and crannies, searching for hidden treasures in the world around her. That curiosity had led her down into the cellar, lured by the promise of discovering forgotten items and nostalgic memories. But now, in the chilling dark with nothing but her racing thoughts, she felt like a character lost in a dark fairy tale. Jamie's voice broke through her panic, a beacon of hope. She yelled back, relief flooding through her, yet tinged with anxiety. "I'm stuck," he called out, but she could hear the urgency in his voice, the panic that mirrored her own. She envisioned him running up and down the aisles, searching for the key to the cellar, his heart pounding just like hers. She cried, the weight of the cellar pressing down, amplifying her fears. The shadows around her felt alive, almost mocking her plight. Every small noise became amplified, the drip of water from a leaking pipe, the distant hum of the store above. Each sound reverberated in her mind, twisting her imagination into more frightening shapes. Upstairs, Jamie was a whirlwind of chaos. He rushed into the office where the key was supposed to be. The clutter on the desk, a mixture of invoices, old receipts, and dusty books felt overwhelming. He pushed aside piles of paper, desperate to find the key. He muttered to himself, frantically rummaging through the mess. Time felt like it was slipping away. He yanked open a drawer with a crash in there, a glint of silver beneath crumpled papers. The key, he snatched it up, relief flooding through him. He exclaimed, bolting toward the cellar door. "Clara," he shouted, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He could practically feel the fear that had enveloped her. He inserted the key into the lock, his hands shaking with urgency. He twisted it and the lock clicked open with a sound that felt like freedom itself. He flung the door wide, the sudden rush of light pouring into the dank darkness. Clara shielded her eyes, squinting against the brightness as Jamie stepped inside. The sight of him brought a wave of relief crashing over her. She cried, rushing into his arms. He said, holding her tightly. "I didn't think it would be locked," Clara whispered, the shock of the experience making her voice tremble. "That's not going to happen again," he said, stepping back to look her in the eyes, his concern clear. "You need to promise me." "I promise," she said softly, feeling the warmth of his support push away the lingering shadows of fear. They emerged from the cellar, returning to the vibrant atmosphere of the store, the smell of baked goods and fresh produce washing over her. But even as the cheerful noise enveloped her, the memory of being trapped lingered, a dark cloud hanging over her spirit. Over the next few days, Clara went about her life as usual, but the fear of the cellar continued to echo in her mind. Whenever she passed the closed door, a shiver ran down her spine. What lay behind it felt ominous, a reminder of her vulnerability. "I'm fine," she assured Jamie one day as they stacked cans on the shelves. He had sensed her unease since the incident, the way she'd glanced toward the back of the store when she thought no one was watching. "You sure you don't have to pretend around me?" he said gently, concern etched across his face. "I know, I just keep thinking about it," Clara admitted, guilt creeping in for feeling this way. "It's okay to be scared," Jamie said, leaning against the shelf. "That kind of fear doesn't just go away overnight, but facing it is part of being brave." Clara felt the comfort of his words resonate deep within her. "What if I go back?" Jamie replied, surprise flickering in his eyes. "I think I should, but only if you come with me," she said, feeling a surge of resolve. The thought of confronting her fears tugged at her courage, weaving together excitement and dread. "I'll be right there," he said, determination shining through his voice. The following Saturday, Clara stood in front of the heavily worn cellar door, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Jamie stood beside her, his presence a stabilizing force. He asked, and she nodded, feeling the warmth of his support. "Let's do this," she whispered, gripping the flashlight in her hand. With a deep breath, they opened the door together, the familiar rush of cold air enveloping them as they stepped inside. Light flooded the small space, illuminating forgotten boxes and casting shadows that flickered like ghosts across the wall. Clara felt her chest tighten for a moment, but she focused on Jamie beside her anchor amid the darkness. "Let's explore," she said, her voice steadier now. With the flashlight illuminating their path, they ventured further into the depths of the cellar. Each step forward pulled Clara from the clutches of fear and closer to the thrill of discovery. Boxes crowded the corners like sentinels of the past. They began rummaging through the forgotten treasures, memories lost in time. Old toys, long-abandoned books, and dust-covered memorabilia filled the air with nostalgia. Clara felt the weight of her fear shift, replaced with an exhilarating sense of discovery. Jamie declared, holding up a vintage toy robot that had seen better days. Its paint was chipped, but Clara couldn't help but laugh at the sight. "Wow," she replied, her laughter dancing in the air. As they sorted through the boxes, they uncovered a faded scrapbook filled with memories, photos from birthday parties, family vacations, and joyous moments frozen in time. Clara carefully turned the pages, feeling a connection to the laughter and love captured within. She mused, tracing her finger over a picture of a smiling child with a birthday cake. "Right. It's not just a cellar, it's a testament to lives lived," Jamie said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. With each item they found, Clara felt the shadows of her previous fears begin to melt away, replaced with the warm glow of friendship and shared experiences. She recalled the stories that had once haunted her, but now they were woven into a new narrative, one of laughter and adventure. Clara exclaimed, her heart light. "Me too." "This is way better than sitting around worrying," he replied, his enthusiasm infectious. As they dug deeper, they stumbled upon a trunk covered in dust. Clara's eyes widened in excitement. "Only one way to find out," Jamie said dramatically, lifting the lid. As it creaked open, they were met with a collection of costumes, sequined dresses, and colorful hats. Clara giggled, pulling out a feathered boa and draping it over her shoulders. Jamie said, grabbing a hat and striking a pose. They laughed and twirled in the costumes, transforming the cellar into their stage, a place where fear and worry faded into the background. Clara said, her laughter ringing through the air like music. "Exactly. Sometimes you have to face what frightens you to find something beautiful," Jamie replied, his expression warm and encouraging. Clara felt a rush of gratitude. This adventure had not just been about facing fears, but about discovering the strength that lay within her. Eventually, they decided to take a break, sitting on the cool floor surrounded by relics of the past. As Clara gazed around the room, she thought back to the darkness that had once clouded her mind. "I can't believe I was ever scared of this place," she said, feeling a sense of triumph wash over her. "You did it, Clara. You faced your fear head-on," Jamie said, pride lifting his voice. "It wouldn't have happened without you," she replied, beaming at him. They shared stories about the items they found, laughter spilling freely as they pieced together the life stories of lost toys and forgotten memories. The burdens of the past began to lift from Clara's shoulders, replaced by the joy of new experiences. Eventually, the time came to leave. Clara stood at the door, her eyes surveying the room one last time. The shadows that had once frightened her now felt like distant whispers, echoes of a past she had conquered. She asked, her heart warm with hope, "Absolutely." "This place is our adventure now," Jamie replied, a smile lighting up his face. As they walked back into the light of the store, Clara felt the last remnants of fear dissipate. She had transformed her experience into something beautiful, a journey of strength and discovery. From that day forward, she knew that those shadows would no longer hold her captive. Together, Clara and Jamie had found something much deeper, a friendship that could weather any storm, explore any darkness, and uncover treasures waiting to be found. The key to their adventures was courage, laughter, and the bond they shared, a powerful combination that would guide them through every challenge life threw their way. And so they stepped into a bright new day, ready to face whatever lay ahead, hand in hand, hearts united in the promise of tomorrow. Together, they would continue their explorations, transforming fear into adventure, one day at a time. The snap of the door behind Clara was startling, the echo like a gunshot in the stillness of the cellar. The moment the heavy wooden door slammed shut, a rush of panic washed over her. She felt the sudden weight of darkness press in around her, swallowing the faint light that had remained just seconds before. She had only wanted a quick look, an impulse to explore the dusty corners of the store cellar, drawn by the allure of forgotten treasures. But now, like a scene from a haunting story, she found herself sealed away in the depths of an old building, alone. She shouted, the name escaping her throat on a wave of desperation. The silence that followed was deafening, wrapping around her like a heavy cloak. Her heart raced as shadows began to dance in the corners of her mind and her surroundings. The air was thick with the musty scent of damp wood and forgotten objects. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She pressed her back against the cold door, panic clawing at her throat. The stories she'd heard about the cellar echoed in her mind. Whispers of lost memories and spirits wandering unseen had filled her ears since she was a child, but Clara had always dismissed them as mere tales to entertain. Now, though trapped in this dark space, those stories felt all too real. Jamie's voice broke through the curtain of her thoughts like a ray of light. She called, her voice shaky but matched with a flicker of hope. "Please help me." His voice was urgent, echoing down the stairway. The footsteps above grew frantic, and Clara could almost picture him searching every inch of the store. They had been friends since childhood. He would never abandon her in her moment of need. Her eyes darted around the cellar, the beams of light above creating strange shapes in the darkness. What if Jamie couldn't get to her? What if no one knew she was down there? The idea plummeted into her stomach like a stone. Suddenly, Clara felt a wave of claustrophobia wash over her. The walls seemed to close in as she began to pace, her breath coming in quickened gasps. Facing the dark shadows, she couldn't help but recall the stories about kids who got lost forever. No, she shook her head, unwilling to let fear take control. She needed to stay strong. Upstairs, Jamie was on the hunt for the key to the cellar. He rushed into the office, the clutter of papers and old invoices throwing his mind into chaos. He muttered under his breath, laboring through the mound of forgotten documents. He couldn't let Clara down, not now. Time was slipping away, each tick of the clock morphing into a heartbeat, a reminder that she was waiting. "I've got to find it," he whispered, his voice trembling with urgency. He could picture Clara's frightened face, and it fueled him forward. Just as he was about to lose hope, a glint of metal caught his eye, a flash of silver beneath a pile of dusty folders. The key. He snatched it up, feeling adrenaline surge through him. "Hold on, Clara." He barreled toward the cellar door, his heart pounding heavily against his ribcage. Just a little farther, he urged himself, dread settling in his chest with every stride. What if he was too late? "Clara," Jamie shouted as he inserted the key into the lock. She cried from the other side, the tremor in her voice breaking his heart. He twisted the key and it clicked open. With a swift push, the door swung wide, spilling light into the suffocating darkness. Clara stood there, her eyes wide with relief and fear, pressed against the opposite wall as though a ghost had just emerged from the shadows. She exclaimed, her voice trembling as she rushed into his arms. He said, holding her tightly as if to shield her from the shadows that had tormented her. Clara buried her face into his shoulder, a wave of vulnerability washing over her. "I didn't think it would be locked," she whispered, her breath warm against his shirt. "That's not going to happen again," Jamie declared firmly, stepping back to gauge her. "I promise," Clara said, catching her breath as they emerged into the light of the store. Familiar scents and sounds flooded her senses, a sharp contrast to the cold, heavy air of the cellar. But even as they ventured into the lively market, a shadow lurked in her mind, echoing with the feelings of entrapment. Over the next few days, life settled into routine, yet the memory of being trapped haunted Clara. She found herself drawn to the cellar door, glancing back often, shivers racing down her spine whenever she heard it creak. It felt like a ghost was pushing at her from behind, urging her to confront her fears. Jamie asked one afternoon, noticing her distractions as they stocked shelves together. "Yeah. Just thinking about being down there," Clara admitted, her voice lacking its usual enthusiasm. Clara, you're safe. I'll always be here to help you, Jamie reassured her, but his gaze remained serious. I know, she sighed, her heart heavy with the truth of those words, but there's also a small part of me that wants to go back, to face it again. He probed, his brows furrowing with concern. I think so, Clara nodded, her voice gaining strength, but only if you're with me. Then let's go together, he agreed, his tone a mixture of determination and concern. As Clara stood in front of that door once more, a flurry of emotions surged within her. This time they felt different, brave rather than fearful. Jamie asked, standing beside her with the key in hand. Ready, she replied, swallowing her anxiety. With a swift turn of the handle, they stepped into the cellar. The memories of her panic wove through her mind like strands of dark smoke. Clara took a breath, bracing herself against the memories as Jamie walked beside her, illuminating their path with the flashlight. Let's see what we can find this time, he said warmly, and with that encouragement they began to explore the dusty shelves beneath the dim light. With each box they opened, Clara found treasures that sparked joy instead of fear-old toys, a vintage lunchbox, and even a cracked ceramic cat. She giggled as they played with each item, the atmosphere of the cellar shifting from foreboding to warm companionship. Jamie said, holding a rusted toy robot. How cool is this? Clara laughed, her heart swelling with nostalgic warmth. They continued digging, but this time, Clara was determined not to let her fear creep in. With every discovery, every shared laugh, she felt a little bolder, a little closer to claiming this space for herself. Then Clara spotted something unusual in the corner, a dusty old trunk. She asked, excitement bubbling in her chest. I don't know, but let's find out, Jamie replied, giving her an encouraging nod as they approached it together. Clara knelt before the trunk, her pulse quickening in anticipation as she slowly lifted the lid. Instead of darkness, the trunk revealed an array of costumes, colorful dresses, hats, and even masks. Clara exclaimed, carefully pulling out a sparkly dress. Jamie suggested, the adventurous spirit lighting his eyes. Clara felt an exhilarating mix of silliness and camaraderie as they began to dress up, transforming the cellar into their own magical stage. Jamie said, adjusting a feathered hat, striking a pose like a dramatic actor. Clara laughed, joining in the fun as she twirled in the shimmering dress. She said, excitement buzzing through her veins. I don't think of it as fear anymore, Jamie replied, his expression lingering somewhere between joy and reflection. In that moment, Clara realized she had taken control, not just of the cellar, but of her own feelings. The shadows that once scared her now hold the promise of discovery. They spent hours laughing and exploring, uncovering relics of the past, an old photo album, a collection of faded letters, the stories of lives that had once filled this space. As they sat surrounded by shards of memories, Clara glanced around, feeling a sense of triumph. I can't believe I used to be scared of this place, she mused, her heart light. You conquered your fears, Clara. Not everyone can do that, Jamie said, pride shining in his eyes. I couldn't have done it without you, Clara replied, her gratitude pouring out in her smile. They prepared to leave. Clara took one last look at the cellar. Once a place of fear, it had transformed into a treasure trove of memories. Let's come back and explore more, she suggested, excitement sparking in her voice. Absolutely, this is our secret hideout now, Jamie agreed. Yet as they stood at the door, an unexpected sound echoed through the cellar, the faintest scrape of metal on concrete, like a whisper in the dark. Clara froze, eyes widening. Jamie asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. Something, I don't know, she murmured, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Another sound, softer this time, like footsteps just beyond their sight. Clara, it's probably just the wind or something, Jamie reassured, though his voice held an edge of uncertainty. No, Clara insisted, her instincts flaring. Just then, the door began to creak shut, a force pulling at it as if someone or something was on the other side, pushing it closed. Clara's heart raced as she grabbed Jamie's sleeve. Jamie. Her panic rose like a tide as the darkness threatened to swallow them whole again. Jamie said, his voice low and tense, but before he could finish, a loud bang rang through the cellar, followed by a low, almost sinister laugh. He shouted, gripping her hand tighter. The door slammed shut with a definitive thud, sealing them inside. The light from the flashlight flickered, casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. Clara's breath hitched in her throat, terror coiling around her as they stood frozen in place. Who? Jamie called out, trying to mask the quiver in his voice with bravado. But all they heard in response was silence, chilling them to the bone as they stood at the edge of the unknown in a cellar that had shifted from sanctuary to an echo of fate. At that moment, they both realized this time, facing their fears would be much more than an adventure. They were caught in a mystery that was only just beginning to unfold, and as the lights flickered once more, the shadows began to dance around them, hinting that something darker was lurking in the depths of the store.